Welcome to Doing It My Way by Beata Matras, a podcast about project and product management, communication, brand, and IT. All these topics will definitely improve and have a positive impact on your career. So join me today, subscribe, and expect a new episode every week. Thank you. In this episode, we're exploring the transformative world of remote work with Nadia Harris, a leading voice in remote and hybrid work models. As the founder of remoteworkadvocate.com, Nadia has been pivotal in redefining workspaces globally, from collaborating with giants like Roche and Amazon to enhancing team performance through flexible working models. Nadia's expertise is unparalleled. Today, she'll share her journey, the beauty of working on her own terms, and how you too can embrace the remote work revolution. Welcome, Nadia. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for the invite. Super happy to be here and to share all the stories that I hope will add value for your audience.
Yeah, definitely. I'm 100% sure that today we'll have a conversation that will change the mindset about remote work for to some of the professionals that are listening to us. So to kick off, Nadia, can you share with us your journey into becoming an international remote work expert? What inspired you to pursue this path?
Okay. Thank you for this question. So, to everyone's disappointment, I'm going to say no, this wasn't planned initially. Okay. It just happened because of the fact that I deeply believed in some things that not many people believed in a long time ago. And the reason is also that I'm a nonconformist. Whenever I see things, I always tend to question them. I always ask why, and I never agree to the things that don't buy. Well, let me put it this way. And there was a time in 2015 when I lived in the States and I was looking for a job. And I sent my CV to multiple, companies, not knowing where I'm sending it actually. So, and I was looking for an on site job, a stable on site job. And one day I got a response, hey, we'd like to hire you to work from home. And I thought, well, this is a scam. You can't make money when you work from home. This is not a normal job. That's what I thought. But because I am a very curious person, at that time, I thought, well, let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. Let's see what that is. And of course, this was a contractor role, which meant that I only made money when I was working exactly, which I mean, you only make money when you work in general, right? But I mean, here for clocking in and clocking out and for the minutes and for the time. And I didn't dedicate much time back then. So my first paycheck was, I think, roughly $4 or something like this for the whole month because I worked like for 3 minutes. Really, seriously, no kidding. And I thought, oh, this is a scam. But they kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me like, hey, log in more to the system. We need you. We need you. We need you. And then after some time, I think after the next month, I figured that, hey, I made so much money that I can buy plane tickets to travel to different destinations and even pay for the hotel. And then I thought, well, this is so cool. It is going to be my extra income. And I started to live this, and embrace it even more and more and more. And they were giving me more and more and more work. And then a year later, I moved back to Europe and I could keep that job. And I thought, well, that's kind of fun to be in Europe and to be able to work still in the States, And that was also an eye opener for me. I went into the talent acquisition industry and I started seeing loads of things that I thought were completely stupid. And I'll be really blunt in saying this. Like, for example, oh, can you relocate people from South Korea to Europe so that they work during the night shift, servicing clients online in the e-commerce industry in South Korea? Like, why would you do that? This is so stupid, And then try to relocate these people, all these families and everything. So I was working globally, but all the time also dealing with relocations for, well, obviously the people that I had to hire and that I had to look for. And I thought, well, come on, like you lost your mind. This isn't supposed to be that way at all. And then I also came across companies that were remote first at that time and also different gigs that I was doing. My background in the very beginning, I mean, before I started working remotely, 2015, I was a lawyer. I quit my profession right before getting my license because that was, well, I don't want to say too boring, but in a way, it kind of tailored me to one market, which I didn't want to do back then. So I dropped everything, and that's why I also moved to the States on a one-way ticket. So that's the story. And now today, why I'm saying this is because all these experiences and everything have brought me to a situation where I work with remote first and hybrid companies all around the world in talent acquisition strategies. So, designing how to make sure that you can hire people in different countries, also from a legal perspective. I'm now a remote work lawyer as well. And yeah, and I am responsible for HR and, well, making things work in general. Also, operation wise, business operation wise, to make sure that, well, people have the opportunity to work for a great company no matter where they come from or live. And this is also my mission. I hope I haven't bored you to death, but that's the story.
No, this story was actually amazing, and you mentioned one thing, South Korea. I'm going to South Korea. That was my dream for the last 10 years, and I'm going to finally like visit in March, end of March. So yeah, I don't know why you mentioned South Korea, but yeah, just by coincidence. I love
Destiny.
coincidences, so
That's
yeah.
your
So
destiny.
let's say this is destiny, destiny exactly. Um, the second thing that I caught is that actually traveling made you like challenge the status quo.
Yes.
It was yeah, it was that, yeah, that like you went to United States, you saw the different kind of models of working, and you started to challenge what you already learned, for example, like here in Poland or in different countries, yeah. So that's again a kind of how traveling to different countries, how like even like meeting new people from different backgrounds, different perspectives can develop you. And I totally love this mindset.
Yeah, 100%.
And
One thing I'd also add to the story, or something I probably haven't mentioned, where the root cause
yeah,
of all this madness is I am a third culture kid. So I was born and raised in Germany. I'm also partially Polish, and I'm half American as well. And because of this, I never felt like I belonged in one particular place. And this is where I always had to explore and challenge and also travel, and broaden horizons. So that was the deep, I would say, desire in me to actually keep doing this before I was even aware of where I'm going.
okay, so you were like looking for your place, for your home. Can I like understand it
Um,
like that?
Well, not really. I would say I wasn't really sure where I belonged from like a cultural perspective. And also when someone told me, well, you have to work where you live, I thought, but why? I speak different languages. I lived in different places. We have technology right now. Like, why do you want to limit me this way? This is ridiculous. I'm just not going to play along. And that was
Mm.
always, the willingness to explore and keep challenging things.
Okay, and another question that came to my mind, you said you're helping organizations to incorporate this hybrid or the remote work model. And what about individuals? Are you only helping more organizations or also like individuals in some cases?
Yeah, so I mostly work with companies, but for individuals, I have gone the extra mile over a year ago because so many people reach out to me and they ask me, hey, how do I find a remote job? And I mean, this is fully justified. So I did one thing, which is still, it's still available. It's an online course, which is called Find Your Remote Dream Job, where I am sharing step by step how to prepare a CV, like a resume, how to find companies that are hiring remotely, how to engage with recruiters, how to focus on your skills, what questions you can expect during an interview, and also at the end of the day, what is going to be the best model for you to be hired, whether it's employment, if it's even possible, or if you should be a freelancer or a contractor, what is possible in what country, to help the people and navigate, help them navigate this path.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's something you can like help more people, more individuals with, yeah, because usually, okay, the companies have to decide on their own, like the kind of executive team has to decide whether they want to
Yeah.
have that model or not. But with individuals, it can be challenging. So great that you're giving this opportunity to more people, yeah, to more individuals. And I wanted to say also that I'm your follower on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and I see like your day-to-day work life looks incredible, really. So, how have you crafted a career that allows you to work from different countries and on your own terms?
Yeah, so thank you, first of all, for, for these kind words. And I want to state one thing up front. This is true. I am not playing any games, and this is not a scam. I mean, of course, every single day doesn't look like this, okay? But every other day does. And that is a fact. And obviously, this is what I share. I don't think that everyone would be interested to see how I work sometimes 12 or 14 hours in a row delivering things, and sometimes having meetings with clients in different time zones. For example, one of the worst things I did once in my life only, and I'll probably never do it again, but never say never. I worked with a client in Australia and I had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. No way. Yeah, although it was asynchronous, then still sometimes it completely ruined my day. Or now that this is something I can tough when I have some clients in California, it sometimes happens that I have to have an update call or something at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock my time. Doesn't happen always, but well, maybe once a month or every, I don't know, 2 months when they can't meet earlier, then that is the case. How have I crafted it? I think that I'm a really agile person. I also have no work life balance. I will make it very clear. I have work life integration. Okay. So I love what I do. I take breaks during the day. When I want to start working at 8 o'clock in the morning, probably I will not do this because I am just not mentally fit at 8 a.m. But if I have to, I will. For example, when I travel, then and I also embrace workations a lot, right? So I travel to different destinations and I work from different destinations. So what I do is I sometimes wake up then really early. I work when everyone is getting ready to start their day. Then I stop at about 9 o'clock and I, take a break and go and do whatever. And then at noon, I come back and I, check in or have a meeting or whatever. And then I stop again, have the whole day to explore and do all the things I want. And then in the evening, when everyone is kind of going to sleep, I sit on the balcony and I get things done with sometimes a glass of wine. I'm not going to lie. So that sometimes, and with a nice view, that's what happens. If it's deep work, for example, then, well, obviously, I, like with common sense, just a little bit, right? But well, like really, still I have to focus on what I'm doing. Yeah, but I think it's all about being super agile, ready, and always going the extra mile. Because for me, there is no excuse like, oh no, I am going to disconnect now at 4 o'clock because I need my peace. There's always a price to pay. So my price to pay is the fact that I know I always have to deliver and I always have to plan. I'm a planning freak. Okay. I plan my week. I plan my month. I plan my quarter. Sometimes I even plan my year. I have to know exactly because I work with so many different projects and so many different clients that I have to have calendar blockers to make sure that I don't know, that I don't have to events in different destinations on the same day, for example, which happened in the past. So live and learn. Yeah, so it's really trying to have all the things under control, and allocate time properly.
Okay, so you already mentioned one of the things that help you to like maintain productivity, and it's your calendar. And I have to admit that I'm doing the same. With working on a like kind of 9 to 5 job, or just more like in this kind of flexible setup, and it's like hybrid work, and also like having a podcast and Instagram and like various conferences on the way. I need to know where I am like tomorrow or today. Like I love calendars, I love planning, and when people want to like meet with me, they're sometimes like it's like negotiation with a terrorist, actually, like meeting you, because you have like so many things planned. But I like it. I just live happily by doing that. And sometimes I also let myself to be more agile, especially in the free days. But yeah, most of the time I kind of need to plan something in advance to be, as you said, to be in the right place, in the right moment with the right people.
Yeah,
And
100%.
yeah, and to keep that trust, yeah, that I'm going to appear there, not left someone out. Yeah, that's just a common sense and kind of respect to people that, yeah, we have an agreement, we have a meeting, so let's do that. uh, but yeah, coming back to the question of maintaining productivity and work-life blend in remote work setting, could you share like more a day in your life to kind of illustrate this?
Oh, sure. Um, Let me share two different categories. One category is going to be the first category is going to be when I don't travel, where I usually do a lot of deep work the whole day, pretty much. But I also take breaks. So let me do it. Let me start from the beginning. So I get up, I eat. Well, obviously we have to eat. I have coffee, but then I already check some things that came sometimes at night, like emails. I'm very curious. They say curiosity killed the cat, and that is actually a big problem because I open these emails. I'm like, there is so much, and then I have to get back to them afterwards. Yeah, so I kind of get the information, I get the message, but I don't do anything with it. I just checked it out because of curiosity. My bad. Yeah. So sometimes then I get overwhelmed. But anyway, then I start when I have some meetings or I have some things to do. I do that, but then I also plan up front so I know what I have to do. And then I try to balance things out. So sometimes when I have to deliver things for a different time zone, I do that in the morning. So by the time people elsewhere wake up, they already have the things done, they have the things completed. Equally, when I have some work that I do in Europe where I am most of my time, like almost always, right? Then I also make sure that everything is scheduled properly in my calendar so that I know what to deliver. I have project management tools. I try not to miss the deadlines ever. If I miss them, it's usually one day, but I'm on it. I'm on it. Okay. Just because I sometimes have so many. Yeah. So no, but I usually don't. So usually everything is on time and the way it's supposed to be when, well, there's a small task to do or whatever. And then in addition to that, I take breaks during the day. So I go to the gym, of course, a habit that I was an anti sport person my entire life until 2 years ago when I thought this is now or never and I have to do this. And I must say, it has changed my life big time because it really allows me to disconnect. And I would lose my mind if I wasn't doing this. I'll be super honest. Like with all the things that I do with, all these different contexts and being everywhere and having so many ideas and also, well, social media, of course, because I get a lot of traction in social media, different platforms. I also try to respond, try to be in touch with everyone and try to have like a custom made approach towards everything. So I take these breaks. And then, well, it depends. Sometimes when I have a day when I feel in the afternoon, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, I am not going to do anything anymore. I just go wherever. Usually, sometimes it's this way that I have so many things to do that I think in the afternoon, oh, it actually doesn't matter whether I'm going to sit here for an hour or 2 hours because it's still too overwhelming. Let me just drop everything and I'll just go away and I'll come back, let's say at 7 o'clock in the evening with a clear head and like, oh, okay, now let's tackle this, let's do this. So this is usually my routine. I often work at weekends as well, not because I have to, but sometimes when I feel that I don't want to do a lot on Friday, for example, or I don't want to do a lot on Monday, I do it on a Saturday because I want to. If I don't want to, I don't do it. It's all according to plan, right? So if you know you have a deadline, if you know you have a deliverable, then you can kind of plan things your way. So it's like super flexible, but you also have to be very accountable. When I travel, it's a little bit different because then, as I said, I try to work in the morning, then I try to take a break to go do fun things, come back at noon, check back in. The like life hack that I always do is I always make sure that I have a local SIM card when I'm not within the EU to make sure that I am always online. So you can actually order this online. Sometimes it's this way that when you land at a certain airport, the provider is already there, waiting, standing there with your first and last name saying, hey, this is your SIM card with like high speed internet. And then I know that I'm always connected if needed, right? If someone needs something from me, or when I am elsewhere. Once, for example, I was in the UAE. I think that was 2 years ago. I was in the UAE multiple times since then, but that was one of my first stays. And I was on the desert in the UAE, and I had to have an urgent call, and I literally had a camel next to me and everything, because I went to explore the desert and everything. And it's like, hey, can you join? I'm like, sure. I have a high speed internet on the desert, and I actually joined on my phone to have this 15-minute call. So, well, that's the flexibility. And then, as I said, I continue my deep work in the evening. Of course, I sometimes take time off as well. I do that, but it is also not easy, because I can take time off and can tell like my long-term clients that yes, I am not going to be there for 2 or 3 days. Fine. But if you have so many things that you do, there's always something that comes in between. A situation that happened to me recently, I stayed in Switzerland for quite a while, and I thought, oh, I'll go to the mountains. I'll have, 3 days off completely. I really want to disconnect and enjoy the nature. And I planned everything accordingly. But one client of mine rescheduled a 2 hour workshop, insisting that it has to be this day. And I really, during the day, had to kind of, switch on my laptop and go and prepare the agenda and everything. What could I do? Nothing. It was urgent. We had to do it. So,
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of self-discipline because it's not motivation; it's self-discipline. I
mhm.
think that you lean on, and you also mentioned that you're using some project management tools. Can you dive deep into that? What tools are you using? Because that might be interesting for our listeners who are mostly like project and product managers.
Oh, yeah, sure. I don't want to recommend a specific tool. People sometimes ask me, what's the best tool? And I'm like, what's your business case? What's your interest? What's your team like? What do you want out of this tool? What other tools are you using? How are you going to integrate them? So if I mention a few tools right now, don't think that these are the best tools on the market. Maybe not. It also depends what tools are used by my clients. So for not really project management, but actually for documentation purposes, there are now several tools that I primarily use. So it's obviously Confluence, it's obviously Notion. It is also now Microsoft Loop, which is supposed to be a Notion clone within the Microsoft infrastructure. So far, it's trying to be a clone, okay, and I won't dig deeper into the cons of it at that stage, but it's definitely within the Microsoft infrastructure, which is really helpful for some businesses that have everything there. Um, for project management, some of those that I use the most. Currently, it's ClickUp, it is Asana, it is Monday, it is Trello. Um, yeah, many others. Well, I probably now forgot. Jira, yes.
But these are, I think, widely used tools that most of the companies right now is using. Though I just wanted to make sure that we mention that. And another thing, because you said you're exercising on a gym and you also look amazing. Like I have to be honest, I'm your follower, so I'm looking at your Instagram photos, and you look healthy, yeah. And how do you maintain that? Because traveling and also being in a different time zones, different places, how do you manage that?
Thank you for this question, and not because you said something nice, which I really appreciate. So thanks for that. But thank you for this question, because this is actually a topic that I have been deep diving into mentally for quite a while. So I think that I have to go back to the pre-pandemic time, where I was obviously working remotely, but I was also working hybrid, and I was also on the way for a lot of time, so a significant amount of time. So I was, for example, once a week driving somewhere, or twice a week going to a different city. That was happening. And then I saw that back then my routine, and I sometimes, by the way, share before after pictures. I will do this once in a while. I will do this once in a while. So one of the things that is absolutely essential. And it's something that I wasn't doing before. I wasn't doing 4 or 5 years ago. It's drinking water. As silly as it sounds. Exactly. This is coconut.
Yeah, all the time. All the
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. People don't do this. And this is so underrated. People forget to do this. Although I know that there are so many water bottles and everything fancy you can buy everywhere. But this is something that has to be done no matter what. And I mean, you can develop this routine. And I'm not going to lie that it helped me during the pandemic and during lockdowns to develop this habit, because obviously when you drink a lot of water, you know, you have to go to the bathroom all the time. So when I was sitting home and we couldn't go anywhere, I started drinking water, you know, developing this habit with time. And this is something that changed my appearance completely to begin with. As silly as it sounds, and probably many people won't believe me, but my face was even different. I was like swollen. I had dark circles under my eyes and everything because I was simply dehydrated. I was able to drink a glass of water for the whole week. It was so bad. Just coffee, 5, 6 coffees every day. No, don't do this. Like, force yourself to drink water. This is the first thing. The second thing is it's obviously sleep. And again, when I travel, whenever I can, I do everything that I can not to have an early morning flight, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. This kills me, and I'm not going to lie. Whenever I have the choice, unless the price is ridiculously crazy, like I know now, for example, that in May I'll be in Berlin again, and I have a 6 o'clock flight in the morning. When I think about it, I'm already sick now, but I mean, I have to tough it, which, well, it is what it is. So once a year, I can do something like that, right? But I think so. It's definitely this. It's definitely water. It's definitely exercising, being able to disconnect at least for an hour or at least for 2 hours, having a hobby. I think this is also very important. And it's obviously the food. And here again, I'm not going to lie, I don't eat crap at all. I am also super self-disciplined, and people will tell me, well, yeah, but why don't you go here and do this? And I'm like, I'm not going to do this because I know that it will make me feel bad. I will feel really bad at the end of the day. So I also plan exactly what I eat, and what the quality of the food is. Again, those are things. I'm not a person who's going like now to tell you to have a particular diet or anything. I won't. But I see what I was doing years ago and what I started doing roughly 3 4 years ago, and what I did before. So it's a change that you see not overnight, but within a few weeks, within a few months, it ultimately changes your life. And then all the things that you didn't like to eat, all the water that you didn't like drinking because you said you prefer whatever sweet, you get used to it with self discipline. And then when you try to eat something you ate before or drink something you drank before, you're like, this doesn't even taste good. So it is self discipline to get to that point. I hope that answers your question.
Totally. It's like I agree 100% really because I went through this similar transformation. I mean, I wasn't like I wasn't like fat, like I don't want to use that word, but I didn't have like in obesity or something like that, but I just felt bad, like mentally and physically. I was constantly like tired. I didn't had any motivation. I was taking few naps during the day and it wasn't like working. And then at some point I decided like, okay, I have to change something. But coming back, of course, we like moved to a little bit different topic, but also connected to remote work and to work itself because how we feel, what we eat, what we are doing with our body, that impacts our day to day. We cannot argue with that. And from your extensive experience, what are the key benefits of remote work for both individuals and organizations? And I would like to focus on maybe project and product management because that's the field I'm working in and I'm super interested in.
So, when we now go online and do the research, we are going to find many arguments for remote work, saying it's amazing, we'll find many against. And this is, those are all the wrong questions as a principle, because people are not robots. We are not machines. Everyone has their individual style, needs, and preferences. And so it's this way that the first thing to begin with is that we have to find out what we really want. Because when we look at the threats of remote work, where people and businesses often say it's loneliness, isolation, you will be in bad shape working in bed, you don't have any um, routine to get dressed in the morning. Those are all things that I listen to them, and I think, people, something is seriously wrong with you. If you want to get dressed only because others will see you, you have a problem. If you will get out of bed only because you have to go somewhere, you have a problem, okay? Because someone is like pointing this out to you, you have to be there, but you don't do this yourself. And I think that the root cause of this entire discussion, like what are the benefits, what can the benefits be, what can the cons be, is that we as human beings have to learn to live our way and understand what we want. Because when we look at it from when we look at the society and when we look at it from a historic perspective, we see that since the very moment when we're born, we have certain routines that we just subconsciously follow, right? And it's just a normal thing. We feel that we know what's right, what's wrong, where to go, what to do. I remember myself, and I, excuse me, love sharing this example. In 2011, 2012, it was my dream to work in a huge corporation, somewhere in a skyscraper until midnight, because I thought that this is great. And why? Because I was brainwashed and fed with information throughout my entire, well, I don't want to even say childhood, but teenage life, that this means success, this means career, this means growth. And this is how we all fall into this, and we think that this is something completely normal, whereas it's something that was actually designed some time ago as a pattern, and we subconsciously follow this. And now, when we talk about benefits, so many people have experienced these benefits during the pandemic. I mean, during the pandemic, one thing that I also have to state is that this had nothing to do with remote work per se in its full glory, because it was forced work from home. You couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't meet anyone. You had problems with flexibility, having your entire family, dog, cat, everything, around you. Sometimes with no dedicated space to work. You couldn't go to a co-working space, couldn't go to the movies, couldn't go to the gym. You couldn't even go shopping at certain hours, right? Ridiculous. So this has nothing to do with flexibility. So now when we look at a sustainable remote work model for individuals, it's actually about consciously, and when we talk about project managers, product owners, everything, then we have to take a look at building a conscious, I don't even want to say routine, but a conscious schedule for ourselves, being in line with the business needs. So it's often this way that when I work with different companies and I join them, they tell me, "Oh, we're flexible. We're all flexible." And I'm like, "What does flexibility mean? Have you defined this flexibility?" "No, everybody's flexible." And I'm like, "Yeah. So I'm going to be so flexible that I won't respond to you for 7 hours when you need something urgent. Will it make you happy?" "No, it won't." Or, for example, some people are never joining some meetings because they're so flexible that they're doing something else. So I always say, think about the business, and seriously, that really happens. And then everyone's frustrated, and the managers tell me, "Nadia, these people are not working. Like, how do you know they're not working? Did you tell them about boundaries? Did you tell them about expectations?" "No, I didn't mention anything. We're working it out." I'm like, "Yes, so you're working out your chaos." So now, from an individual perspective, think about what the expectations of your company, of your manager, of your team are, because you are part of the team. You're working for a shared goal, okay? And this is the schedule, this is the alignment. With the rest of the time, try to plan it your way. take into account where you're going to do deep work, when you have to do potentially some meetings, and establish boundaries, and also like super clear communication, being able to say like, hey, if someone drops something into your calendar without checking that you're unavailable, or if this is your seventh meeting in a row, go back to that person and say, I'm sorry, could we meet tomorrow? Can we meet in 2 days? Or, tell me, please, is that super urgent? Because my capacity for today is blocked. If this is a priority for you, no problem. I will add this to my agenda and I will shift something else. We can't blindly keep accepting things from everyone, and then also having to work at night, because this is also like a very common problem. And this is that what people tell me a lot, that, well, um, the boundaries between work and life have completely disappeared. When people went to an office, there was the front door, they opened, and then they closed the front door, and that's what happened. Yeah, because it was a physical door. Now it's you to build that door and to actually say, hey, I'm not going to work at 11 o'clock at night. Plus, there are loads of, I would say, pathological almost patterns in companies that some people try to foster virtual presenteeism by sending emails at 11 o'clock at night, just to show that they're so dedicated and that they're so working. This is banned in some countries already, to behave like that, and also to behave like this during the weekend. So I would say, no way. There have to be very clear rules for individuals, for me, how I work, what's my style, what I deliver, and also from a team perspective, if that answers part of your question.
I think it answers the question like perfectly, because you also mentioned about kind of, I think, toxic work setups. When you like expect people to, respond at 11, for example, or or just, accepting all the meetings, or just, bumping these meetings into the calendars and expecting everyone to just, appear. It's a lack of respect to your employees. Yeah, I know that, we are paid. That's the question. Are we paid for our time, or are we paid for the expectations that are set towards us? Yeah. And you mentioned that it's very important to actually ask your manager, and to ask whether your boss or manager, about the expectations and how these are set. Also, I think will define kind of certain behaviors that will follow this.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the most common, I would say, symptoms that happens, both in fresh remote companies and also particularly in hybrid companies, is proximity bias. I actually wrote a book about it. I mean, I wrote a chapter in a book about it. It will be out in a few weeks. Excuse me. So this is one of my favorite topics. I say that I have a love-hate relationship with the topic of proximity bias. Why love? Because it is really intriguing to find out where this is coming from, and hate because I despise it with all my heart. So what is proximity bias? It is a symptom that you give some people preferential treatment just because they're near you, just because you can see them, right? And this is, I would say, again, the culprit of all the return to office, besides the fact that the real estate industry is losing money and so on, and that people have loads of psychological problems with controlling and commanding. It's also a cultural thing, and it's also resistance to change. But one of them is actually proximity bias. And we all have it. I have it too, and I always say it very clearly, because this is something that is part of us as human beings. For it's been part of us as human beings for a very long time. Thousands of years ago, when we lived in tribes, being close to other people, living in a tribe meant we would survive. Being alone meant we would die, right? It's that simple. And so now it is embedded, so to say, in our DNA. And then now, when we have this rapid technological development, we just can't keep up. And that's how we see proximity bias. And hey, I see you. I think automatically that I know that you're working. if it's an office environment, and hence all these patterns that people stay late at work, they come to work early so that their managers can see that they're already there. It's all proximity bias. And then in the virtual environment, managers look at people's calendars. Oh, they're busy because I can see that they have something in their calendar. Why do we have so many meetings still? Meaningless meetings, because we think that when we'll see someone, we know they're there. This means they're working. Why do we want immediate responses from someone to know, hey, I can't see you, but you're there? So this is like virtual proximity bias. And this is a huge problem. And this refers exactly to what you're saying, that people should be, and work should be tracked by its deliverables and goals and expectations, not presenteeism and not time, because this is pure proximity bias. And if many, I would say the majority of people, including managers, C-level, and even individuals, they're not aware what is behind their behavior. And whenever I tell them, they're shocked, like, hey, this answers all these questions. Well, this is what you've been doing. You're not aware of the bias that's in you, and that's how you treat other people because of that.
That's the first time I'm hearing about this bias, but it actually makes sense when I think about even like my behaviors sometimes, or um my kind of uh, working environment, how very often people from like certain locations, they are like closer to each other and like, you know, getting the positions. Like, let's be honest, yeah, because they kind of know each other, they are close, they see each other on a daily basis, so they seem more familiar, which means we can build trust easier, we can build the relationship in an easier way. Oh God, I'm going to like have a closer look into my behaviors from this perspective of proximity bias right now. And thank you for raising that.
You're welcome. I told you it's one of my favorite topics. I really try to understand why, like why. And this is how I've been digging deeper into this, like real deep, to try to understand why do we behave a certain way, and that's an answer to some of my questions.
Yeah, and that connects perfectly with the next question that I have on the list, which is like, how does the remote work differ across cultures and regions? How can companies navigate these differences?
That's also a very good question, and it's actually not an easy one. Because although we think that we are a global village, and I on purpose said we think, because to some extent we are, because we are connected more than ever, then we are also super disconnected from a cultural perspective. And we are unaware of these cultural differences that are absolutely essential to build a healthy and also diverse and productive working environment, not only remote working environment, but actually because of the fact that we have so many people from different cultures, both in hybrid companies and also working on site, and also there's outsourcing, right? Then the intercultural collaboration, communication topic is super important. As a matter of fact, that was one of my major topics when I did my MBA a few years ago. And this is again a funny story, an anecdote about me. I joined these studies. I had my first lesson, right? My first lecture, sorry, about exactly this. I was sitting there and I thought, this is nonsense. Why are you telling me all this? I mean, it's very simple. Things are like that, right? And I thought, well, what am I doing here? I came for a serious MBA course, and you're telling me something about how people behave. Like, why do I care? Business is business. Um, of course, this is the wrong approach, and I am ashamed to admit that I was completely blind and I didn't understand things, and that I was biased because I thought that my own perception has to be everyone's perception, and this is again a huge problem. So now we have both high context and low context cultures, right? For example, low context cultures will be very straight to the point. High context will be more emotional, in a nutshell, in general. And so now, for example, a super important thing to embed are emojis. People keep laughing at it very often, saying, oh, emojis are for kids. Why emojis? We are a serious business. I'm like, yeah, but every business is about emotions. So if you don't have this emotional touch, especially when you're working remotely, there is a disconnect. And you may send someone a message, can we talk? If you're a manager, if you send a smiling emoji, your team member probably won't be stressed out. If you send a concerned emoji, they will know that that's probably about, uh, some kind of, I don't know, issue or challenge, whatever happened, right? So it helps us avoid misinterpretation in general. And so I think in terms of intercultural communication collaboration, it's super important in, well, when we're talking about remote companies, to acknowledge that people are different and that they have different working styles. I once had a story with a US company where I had a marketing team, and there was a manager who was from Spain, but he was like super US centric and everything. Half of the marketing team was in the US. Three people were in India. The rest was Germany, Spain, right? And then this manager, someday he's coming to me and he's telling me, you know what, Nadia, I think we will need to replace some of the team members because they're not engaged, they're not actively participating in the conversation. I don't see their passion and everything that they do and so on. I said, who are these team members? Oh, these three from India. I see there is no culture fit. And I'm like, what do you mean by culture fit? And we started designing and talking about what he understood by cultural fit, or maybe what he misunderstood a cultural fit was supposed to be. And I said, hey, show me the performance of these people. Everything was always on time. Everything was done perfectly. The deliverables, they were always, obedient to everything. And I said, listen, this is a cultural thing. They won't speak up, and just do whatever, on calls, because it's not in their nature. You have to understand this. So when you're designing a remote team, you also have to be conscious from a cultural background, what the leadership will look like, what the communication style will be, and also that a cultural fit doesn't mean that everyone is the same, but we share the same values, we believe in the same mission and vision, but we are all different. But if you don't know this, you may be super disappointed.
Okay, and from where we can learn about the cultural differences, for example, between common countries like United States, like United Kingdom, India, yeah, Poland, for example. I kind of know already, this book, The Culture Map,
Yes.
by yeah, this is one of the books. And I also had a conversation with Paulina, an expert from intercultural training, a few weeks before. And she introduced me to this high context and low context cultures. Yet I would still like to know more about the cultural differences. What is, except like traveling to different cultures, a way to learn these differences?
Well, this book, by the way, is a really good book because it's it's also written this way. Of course, I mean, I know the book. I read that, right? So I wouldn't recommend it if didn't know what I was talking about. So, because it shows you a perspective in the beginning. I mean, it shows you a perspective which turns out not to be true, and that actually shows how we are biased. I think it's traveling, but it's also, oh, there's so much available there. I mean, there are also other books if someone likes reading. There are documentaries where you learn to understand exactly what's behind the scenes. So I'd say everyone has access to YouTube. Just do it and just watch. There are different podcasts as well about intercultural communication in teams, whatever you like. Just check Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And there's such a wide range to choose from that, I mean, if you want to dig deeper into this topic, for sure you'll find something. The more knowledge you have, the better. There is no right or wrong here.
Okay, okay. I'm going to look for some new resources of information to just deepen that knowledge and yeah, share with others, because I feel like right now with this current setup and moving into more online remote environment of work, we need to be aware of this cultural differences and how it affects our work, because we can end up really frustrated that some people do not understand us when we actually didn't make a step to learn about their culture
Yeah.
and yeah, listen to their needs, listen about their culture, their environment, their context. Yeah.
Yeah, and
um
that's what I always say. It's not, communication is not about the fact that I am saying something. Communication is about the fact whether my message has been received with the exact same intention that I wanted to share, right? And then if we have an intercultural team and if we work in that case remote first teams all around the world, it is not me and my perception to be evaluated and to say, hey, for me it's clear because I am not the receiver. Okay, so how do I design my message to make sure that it's received properly? And this is a huge homework for everyone to do.
Yeah, huge homework and very challenging one. Yeah, we are more about speaking. Even I love speaking, like to be honest, but I'm also like trying to balance that um, with listening. Yeah, with actually not having a monologue, but rather a conversation, which is difficult.
I understand.
um, so, if the company or the team would consider moving to remote work, what initial steps would you recommend for a smooth transition?
Now, this is going to be super cliche, but do a simple SWOT analysis. Okay. Don't rush into remote work just because another company has it. Although I'm definitely advocating for remote work, but you have to have common sense in it. Okay. So think about the opportunities, think about the pros, cons, think about threats, everything that is there to make sure that you are able to design the right business model. Because for me, remote work is not a benefit, it's not a perk, it's a business model, it's a conscious business model, right? So, from both perspectives. So, start with a SWOT analysis and after that, design your own model. Because again, there is no one size fits all remote work model. It may be that we are in one country and we are in one city even, and people can work from, well, not only home but also from other locations, which is now particularly in some countries it's not possible. I wanted to say in Poland it's also possible, right, because of the Polish audience. Now it used to be different, but now it is literally a place that you have to agree on with your manager, your company, and remote work doesn't mean work from home. Same thing in similar thing, maybe not same thing, but in other countries it is quite similar, but a little bit different. So we're not going to get too granular here. Um, but there's also this option to be hired in a completely different city. There's also this option to be hired in a completely different country. And then when you want to hire in a completely different country, you have to think why you want to do this. Again, what the pros and cons will be, how you can hire these people within the EU. Well, you can hire them as a foreign employer. There's obviously the concept of freelancers, so contractors, so B2B as well, for example, which is has to be designed very well because now there is a hot topic of employment misclassification, and I deal with it a lot. Long story short, well, people want to work on B2B or as freelancers, but technically they are employees, but they just don't pay social contributions in their audits, especially in many European countries. So you also have to know how to prepare the contracts, how to have the entire business operations designed also from a performance perspective or from a quality perspective to make sure that you don't run into any compliance issues. There are also employers of record, so companies through which you can hire people as employees in other countries, not only in the EU, but also all around the world, pretty much. The question is, do you need people in different time zones for whatever reason? If you do, how are you going to shape again the routines? Will there be any core hours? Are there any expectations that you have as a business, as a manager? When we look at remote work and when we look at flexibility, I always recommend to take a look at it from a three-layer perspective. The first one is the business. What do we want to achieve as a business, and what are the business-wide expectations? Like, how do we understand remote work as a business? Then, so this is like the big playground, okay? This is how far you can go. And then the next step is the teams and the managers. Okay, so this is the second layer. So what's specific for us? Because again, there's no one size fits all. I have teams where in big corporations, people are spread across the country and abroad, but there are also other teams where everyone lives in the same city, for example, and then they say, oh, come to the office every 2 weeks because we'll meet. And again, from a company perspective, that can be imposed because for the IT department, where people are all around the world, they won't be able to meet every 2 weeks in the office. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? So think about the second layer, and then the third layer is also going to be individual. What does remote work and flexibility mean for me? So how do I fit in the expectations of the teams and of the manager versus the company, which is that on top? And this is how that should be designed. Yeah, so a playbook, you need a playbook ultimately. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and it sounds, I like the structure. So I like this business, teams and managers and individuals split. And I think that can be useful looking from a different perspectives on the topic of remote work. And that could actually also understand to help each of the parties, yeah, either your manager or individual or the business representative or executive. Yeah, it's also like how we define the business. Yeah, but I guess you define the business as the main executive team
Yeah.
in that context. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
one more thing to mention also, workations, a super hot topic, which is in that case a benefit. I hear a lot that it's illegal. No, it's not illegal. Like, stop these arguments because I'm really going to. I mean, to everyone's benefit, I'm not near to them because I would be like, no kidding. The fact that it's not regulated in a certain law doesn't mean it's banned. And I think that if companies, so you do an evaluation, you look at local and international laws to make sure from a company perspective that it's possible for people to travel and work. Again, it's not supposed to be a substitution for a vacation, not at all. But now, to embrace also diversity and well-being and everything, it's actually great to give people the opportunity to be able to work from a different country for a few weeks or even for a month or 2 months, whatever. Up to 3 months is usually the longest that I do. Because think about it, there are people who come from other countries, so, and they're separated from their families and they could stay there longer and still work, right? Um, they could also, during summertime, go somewhere to a summer destination, rent a bed and breakfast or Airbnb, whatever, right? And just stay there with their children and everything and work. And that would just be really fun during summertime. Or equally, some people have relatives in other countries that left a certain country a long time ago to make a living, and they also see them, I don't know, once a year. Today, with technology, this doesn't have to happen anymore. We can actually be more agile and more flexible also when it comes to borders, if it's designed properly, and that's definitely doable.
and we speak a lot about the mental health, diversity, inclusion. And actually, I think that's one of the ways we could um, like live up to the values that we're spreading to the world. Yeah, if we want to be a company that is diverse, that is inclusive, that promotes mental health, how traveling and like being in a different country or different, like within, even like with a different weather, I mean, how weather is sometimes impacting our behaviors, how we feel. Like right now, spring is coming in Poland, and I can already feel that. I feel like more power energy, but winter was awful for me. Like it was really difficult. And although I'm, trying to take care of my health, like, maintain the healthy diet and so on and so on, sometimes this the lack of the sun
Yeah.
really impacts our mood. Yeah, so if you can't do that and can't do this workation, um yeah, and what is like a different way of taking care of your mental health, for example, if we're speaking about that, what you want to like provide every employee with a therapist? Like maybe it's cheaper to just allow them work from whatever they want.
Yeah, I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about workations, and I shared one of my favorite quotes coming from Coco Chanel, which says, "The best things in life are free. The second best are very expensive." Okay, workations are free. Okay, and they're really the best because they give you the freedom and the flexibility. So this is how I Yeah, I'm standing there and I have all the executives listening to me, and I'm like, hey, you know what? Take a look at Coco Chanel because she got it all. And they're like, oh, really? We never thought about it this way. See, everything that is the best is free, right? Relationships, um, freedom, flexibility, choice, everything, right? But the rest, when we look at capitalism and everything, you need to buy stuff, right? To have a better quality of life and everything. The more expensive, the more you pay, the better, right? The higher you raise the bar. But ultimately, the things that we care about the most are free. And for occasions, if it's designed properly in a company, you don't have to give people bananas or pizza days or whatever idiotic, like we're in a kindergarten. Just give them the freedom and design your framework, your working framework properly. It's really that simple. But common sense these days is a quality that is very rare. And I don't mean to insult anyone right now, but unfortunately, even from a proximity bias perspective, as I said it, and as I observe what's happening, we are more biased than we think. And only when we learn, when we broaden horizons and we grow, we observe. And exactly in that, also, I would say travel. But at least if someone doesn't want to travel for whatever reason, read for heaven's sake, watch documentaries, connect with other people, try to understand instead of being locked up in your own surreal approach towards I think that what I believe is right. That's just an approach that you're going to fail with that.
I tend to say very often that we are the stories that we tell to ourselves, and we write our stories. Yeah, we are the directors, and we like decide whether we want to make it a drama, an adventure book, a romance, and we also that in that narrative, that story impacts how we see the world and what we see in different peoples. Yeah, so it's our choice whether we tend to see good, positive, and trust in others, or we see the negative, the betrayal, the like we cannot trust someone and we cannot give them the freedom because they are going to use them.
It's usually a mirror of everything that is in us and our fears. Exactly, fully agree with that. And I also observe that also, when I look at different management styles of different managers, when I try to understand why they behave a certain way and I dig into this deeper and I get to know their story, things immediately become clear. Like where the fears come from, where the bias comes from, why this particular pattern, and sometimes they're not aware themselves, but then I'm like, okay, I know how to navigate this whole conversation, understanding the root cause of what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes, yeah, listening to someone else's story, getting to know what are the root, because that's where I'm sometimes very interested in getting to know these people because I want to know what's there. I do not accept people being evil or just, the villains just because they are like evil or or negativity. There's always a reason. There's always this why. There was a moment or a certain events in their life that shaped them as who they are now. And
100%.
yeah,
100%. And I like looking at it. You just touched an important topic, something that I'm actually also passionate about. I like looking at different situations that happened throughout the human history. And I look at all the leaders back then. Some of them were good, some of them were evil. But then, especially the evil ones, and I'm not justifying anyone here or whatever. Quite on the contrary. But then I try to understand where this is coming from, like what happened in their early lives, when they were children, when they were teenagers, like what situations in their life, like how did it happen that they turned out to be behaving in a certain way. And then the funny thing is, I mean, funny, the sad thing, the dramatic thing is that there's exactly always a story. And when you look at it and you really analyze it deeply, you always see that there is a reason. The dramatically sad thing is that the people who let all the bad things happen, for example, they never saw that and they never cared. Yeah, and I think that if more people were to analyze all these behaviors, and also if we looked at our society from a historic perspective, we'd see that patterns tend to be repeated over and over again just because of our ignorance and because of the fact that we are not willing to learn. because we think that every generation is better and smarter, or we know better than you do. Technology changes, fashion to some extent, but it keeps coming back. Cars, buildings, people are the same. The behavioral patterns are the same. And only if we understand, then we are smarter when we know how to navigate things better. But unfortunately, that is not the case. So here we go again. So I am still an optimist, and I believe that, everything that is good will always win, including common sense.
Yeah, definitely. And we need to also remember that uh, being self aware of the story of what shaped us gives us the power to make another choice. Yeah. The leaders from the past, the evil ones that you mentioned, did wrong choices. But it was ultimately, ultimately, that was their choice. Yeah. And that's why we see them as evil right now, because they just made bad choices. So we have right now a space to make better ones. Just we need to like embrace it and allow ourselves to do that. Um, yeah, I love how remote work topic became a life lesson.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's really this way because people look at it from a narrow perspective, but I never look at it from a narrow perspective because I actually connected with so many things and how it's both a revolution and an evolution, right? But then it is not that simple. It's not so simple to say that, hey, you will just work from home, take your laptop, and that's it, because it touches on so many aspects, history, behavioral patterns, cultures, of how cities are shaped, how countries are shaped, how people lead their lives, well-being, emotions, everything all together. It's a completely different reality that we can build it, and we can make the choice that you're talking about only if we understand and we know what's happening. Then we can shape it. If we don't know, we'll just blindly be like, oh, this is right, this is wrong, tell me what to do. Well, today no one's going to tell us what to do. We have to do this on our own.
Yeah, definitely. And I have one question right now about like, should we as individuals, as employees, persuade our employers or companies to embrace remote work models, or changing jobs, changing companies is the only way?
That's a good question. If you have a partner to have a conversation, I would say try to create this awareness. If you have someone who is completely bullheaded and doesn't want to understand, there is nothing you can do, run away. I would always give it a try. I would always try to, but people and also C-level executives, they really like data. From my perspective, the data that we have on the market concerning productivity, concerning productivity primarily and work quality, this is so crazy because there are different surveys on the market, and they contradict every one survey contradicts another. This data contradicts that, and if you want to find um, data to justify your opinion, whether it's A or B, you always find the data. There are people who believe that the earth is flat. And they still find something to justify their opinion, which we know is not true. The same thing will be with people who are against remote working. Well, of course, if you're in the manufacturing industry or an assembly worker, I'd say, well, like, that's, not even talk about remote working options in that case, but different flexibility. That's a different story. But I'd say the most important thing is data. And then you, as an individual, from your perspective, how are you able to show that you maintain the high quality of work and that you meet the deadlines, that your deliverables are always done on time, right? Um, and to have this evidence, unbiased evidence, because now most of the surveys on the market, they ask managers, what do you think? But asking someone what do you think is already a question where you're not going to get an unbiased opinion, right? Or employees feel more productive working from home. If you ask people who have really low income and they share an apartment with six other people where they could walk to an office nearby, they'll tell you we don't want to work from home. And I had that case actually in one company. And they'll say, no, we are super not productive. But others will say, yes, we're productive. So, I mean, it all depends how you ask this question. So, my recommendation is to focus really on unbiased data, something that can't be undermined. And project management tools in that case can, of course, help.
Hmm. Okay, that's interesting because I'm actually wondering how to get unbiased data. Because on the other side, okay, we have surveys that can be unbiased, but on the other hand, someone who is analyzing the data always has some kind of bias,
Yeah,
and we how can we be sure that you know
yeah.
this person doesn't have or is aware of having a bias?
Yeah, I'd rather say it's all about planning because before it was this way that you come to a building and there you sit there and you just do something. I see you, so you're working. Now, my question is, what are your goals for this month or what are your goals for this quarter? A very common practice and approach in remote first companies and something that I always recommend are OKRs, but that's like would be a different discussion here. But anyway, so you have these goals, then we have goals for every week, literally, okay? And we have action steps, we have tasks, we have deadlines, and we have the components of everything, how it has to be done, okay? And then, so this is the quantitative criteria, like how many tasks of those can we complete within a given time frame. The second one is quality. The question is, how do we assess this quality? If we have, I don't know, a dev team and there are bugs constantly increasing in the system, we know that there is an issue. The question is, would we still have the same issue if we ask the people to return to the office? We don't know that. So let's say, hey, come to the office and we'll check that. Like, what's the root cause of making these bugs? In terms of quality, like for example, for me, whenever I have a deliverable, so obviously it's the deadline, it's whether I can do this in a timely manner, and how much I get done. But then the quality is the satisfaction of my client. If the client says, hey, I'm happy with you, what you've delivered, I know that this is amazing. And that's good. And I can compare it. So I would say you cannot make an unbiased decision about remote work if you can't compare. The problem is that we never measured it from this perspective when people were working in the office. So we can't compare. So, and I think, again, it should be quality, should be quantity, should be tasks, goals, milestones, and then also see how it adds value to the business. It's not an easy task. It's actually something that I'm now implementing in a remote first company, and it's working well. It is part of like a big restructuring project, but it's common sense because I know it's also difficult for everyone to say, hey, trust me. I am going to trust you. Perfect. But if I can't give you just trust if we haven't agreed on anything, right? If I tell you, deliver this for then, this is what is expected exactly. Now you have a week. I trust you that you get it done. The stage is all yours. Perfect. But if we don't have this criteria, then I can't even measure this trust. I can't see whether it was justified to trust or it wasn't because I have no work outcome. Like, how can I do that? So it is complex, but it's doable.
And that's very important why goals, specific goals, especially like OKRs and objectives and key results are needed, because we need to know where are we aiming for the objectives and key results, what actually is how we define this objective to be realized. Yeah. And that very often should come from our managers, bosses, yeah, the companies. Um, yeah. And that's how we can build trust on the objectives task based way, let's say. Last question, and we will wrap up. What are you seeing as a future trends? What do you predict in a remote work?
I think that remote work is part of the future of work, and so is definitely AI and automation. It's not a secret that everyone can see numerous layoffs happening on the market. I am not a fortune teller, but I hate to disappoint you, but I think that's not the end. I think more is coming for sure. I think that the future, so I think why am I saying artificial intelligence is part of the future of work and so is remote work? Because artificial intelligence doesn't need a place to work to begin with. And in many areas, it's much faster and more productive, definitely much faster, and produces higher quality of results than a human being. So if we are stuck in our mindsets with going back to a physical location, it is ridiculous to begin with, because we are redefining how work is being done. So for me, I know that remote work has become a buzzword. I hate it. Sometimes when I hear or read remote work this, remote work that, I'm like, people, stop this. I can't listen to this anymore. It's just a common sense approach towards work, which is not a place. But I think that what's going to happen is that we have to level up. We all have to level up. We have to understand that although I believe in companies that are people centric, and although I believe that people are the heart and soul of every company, it is a fact that they're also an asset because this is how capitalism is built, right? And in the end of the day, when we talk about cuts and layoffs, they're just a number. So my question is, how do I, as an individual, understand how I'm adding value to the business? And this is why it's so important to be able to connect my work, my deliverables, my beliefs into the company's anticipated, expected business results, mission, vision, goals, and obviously as well, even values to some extent. And only then we can understand how we can upskill, sometimes reskill ourselves, and how we can navigate new ways of working to focus on everything that is tangible and everything that can be measured. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about numbers, unless it's a nonprofit, right? And I think that the times when we were just sitting there and we were just repeating the same routine, waiting until someone tells us what to do are gone. We have to go the extra mile. We have to go grow, understand, learn, observe, and see how we can also leverage our expertise and our added value. Because if we don't do, and I see this on a daily basis, unfortunately, I am also responsible for conducting layoffs all around the world. That's one of the, sad things that are also part of my duties. And each and every single time it's a dramatic situation, and each and every single time people are very surprised. And I try to tell them, and I try to write about it, but no one wants to listen, And I say, hey, you have to look at it that the times of stability, how you understand it, how you used to understand it, because you had a long-term employment contract, indefinite employment contract, these days are gone. I can tell you, and again, I know that people don't want to hear it, and I don't want to be pessimistic in the end of this conversation here. Everyone can be fired anywhere. And unfortunately, the times today are that you have to take ownership of your life and your career. If you're going to wait until your manager tells you you can be someone on a senior position in 2 or 3 years, I am telling you what to do. Good luck if you're going to wait. You have to go the extra mile, and it's your effort to be always ahead. And many people don't want to acknowledge this. Many people don't want to do this. Unfortunately, the market is changing. We are going towards automation. We are going towards results. And again, as much as I believe in humanity and in people and in goodwill and common sense, we also have to understand that work isn't just a strict routine, but it's all about deliverables and adding value. So that's how I also see remote work being part of it, which from my perspective, some businesses will always stay on site, some will be hybrid, some will be remote. But this is not the core issue. The core thing is here, how are we working? What are we working on? And then where we work, and then what we will be working on. What will we be working on in the future? And how will we work in the future? And those are the questions that we should try to answer.
Is the brutal truth,
Yeah.
but I love it. I mean, it's about the ownership, yeah? It's about again making the choices, about taking the responsibility of your life and not blaming everyone around for what is happening. Like, yeah, probably it's not like very popular opinion. But yeah, but it's about the ownership, what we're actually doing with our day to day, how we are spending time, what we are choosing, and do we invest in ourselves, in our knowledge, in our skills, and getting to know what is happening around us, instead of believing in.
Something that we sometimes want to believe because it's easier, sometimes we don't know on purpose until there's a big crash and like, what happened? Really, you didn't want to listen, you didn't want to believe. Like, I mean, again, it is terrible. These things are terrible for people, and I know how dramatic it is to lose a job and everything, but I mean, if you see what's been happening for the past few years, I mean, it has to trigger your thinking to be like, oh, okay, I may be at risk too, potentially, although I hope it's not the case, but not have conversations with your manager who's telling you, no, everything is fine, because the manager himself or herself has no bloody idea what's happening behind the scenes, It is what it is.
Yeah,
It hurts.
yeah, it
It's the truth.
yeah,
I see that every
it
day.
it, it hurts. Yeah, it hurts, but I hope that it will be for some individuals like a wake up call to actually, um, yeah, to do something, yeah, to take the ownership, to take responsibility, and think and plan and act.
Yes,
That's the most important. Act.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, Nadia. Last few questions. I'm usually closing my conversations with a typical three questions. The first one is, what advice do you have for professionals seeking companies that embrace remote work? What should they look for? What's like your main advice from this episode?
Focus on your skills and how you can monetize your skills. Don't just look at titles, but always look at how your skills can add value to the business. Remote work is not a job itself, it's a way to work. Okay. And it's all about the skills that you bring to the table.
Thank you. Um, Looking ahead, what are your goals for this year? Do you have something you're waiting for?
Oh God, I wait for every next day. I'm surprised like what it's going to bring. Yeah, of course, my whole year is planned. There's a lot of traveling. There are many conferences. I am releasing two books this year as well. One in German, one in English. So, which I have a chapter, so it's not like fully mine. Oh goodness, there really is a lot happening also with the clients, and I think that. It's even hard to describe. I mean, I love a situation where I know 60% of what's going to happen, but 40% I never know. And this is what makes it so exciting. But I do have everything pre planned to the most possible extent.
Okay, great, great. Just out of curiosity, what is making you more like happy and satisfied? This 60% plan or this 40% unexpected? What is like happening?
Well, that's a very good question. I like to have things under control, okay, but I know that I can't have everything under control. And I am not a person who likes to know the next 20 years of my life. It's like those questions, interview questions in the past where, who do you want to be in 10 years? I don't know. Maybe I will live on an island. Maybe I'll be a dancer. Maybe I am going to engage in knitting. I have no idea. And I hate to be stuck in something that I talk myself into and say, hey, now I have to adjust my entire life to it. So, but now you're talking about this year. So I would say equal. It's equal to me. Like some things that I know, that gives me also some stability to be able to plan and to execute my ideas and plans. But the rest, I'm always open and I learn as I go.
Okay, okay, that's a yeah. I like this kind of blend again. Yeah, like work-life blend. That's again like with planning, blend, planning, and unplanning, and we're blending that, and that's how somehow is giving us comfort, success, feeling of success. Um, yeah, happiness, maybe, whatever we call that. Okay, the last question for our listeners that would like to connect with you, where they can find you.
Everywhere. No, okay. No, they can find me on my website, remoteworkadvocate.com. I have different articles and videos and resources. I call it the go-to place for everything related to flexible working. I'm constantly working on it myself, so there's new stuff coming out, especially also this year. But I'm still working on it. LinkedIn, you can just find me on LinkedIn, Instagram as well. Facebook as well, apparently also on X, but not active. That is just too overwhelming. So I would say the main sources, it's definitely LinkedIn, Instagram, and the website.
Okay, okay. I'll add it to this episode description so people can find you easily. And thank you, Nadia. Thank you for being my guest, and thank you for engaging conversation. I really love it, and yeah, I hope to meet you somewhere in the world for
Right.
a coffee or for a virtual coffee.
Absolutely. You never know. I was a year ago and a half. I was in Washington D.C. walking past the White House, and suddenly there's someone behind me screaming, "Nadia, Nadia Harris, is this you?" And I said, "For heaven's sake, it is my." It was my remote friend from Alaska that I invited to my podcast 4 years ago. The world is really small, so you never know.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. So thank you one more time, and yeah, hope to meet you in the near future.
Likewise, thank you very much.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of Doing It My Way by Beata Matras. If you enjoyed this episode, please do not forget to subscribe. Remember, this podcast is a dynamic journey and your feedback is very welcomed. Connect with me on social media. I would like to hear your thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions. And stay tuned for upcoming episodes. And until next time, keep doing it your way.